welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday. I hope your guys' week is off to a great start. If you guys like my content and you want to see more of it, make sure you click the button below, click the bell so you're subscribed as to when we have new videos coming out on the channel. As always, I appreciate your guys' likes, comments, and shares. It's really helpful with the channel algorithm and getting this video out into the YouTubes. All right, so with that being said, I had like a weird, brief period where I had some free time to create content where like the cosmos are like chilling just for a moment. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk to you guys about. I'm titling this video, "The Future is Bright." The moon's in Aquarius as I film this, and like I said, I had a rare break in my content schedule, and I found myself peering into the future a little bit, so I figured, why not? I have compiled for you guys the top 10 transits that I'm highly anticipating for 2024. A little bit of like an early look ahead. I'm going to touch on the biggest moments of 2024. I'm sure there's much more, but these are the ones as I scrolled through this next year that really caught my eye. So make sure you guys leave me a comment. Let me know, what do you think? Am I missing anything? And I'm sure some of you guys haven't even really looked at these transits yet. As a reminder, generally in the beginning of the new year, I do some kind of, year ahead look. It's several hours long. We take it through all of the big transits. We will also be touching on like eclipses and how it affects all of the 12 signs. So don't worry, some of that stuff is still coming. This is just an early sneak peek. Well, I'm going to go in no particular order. This is just working at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to take it all the way to the end of 2024. But just before I even started looking at my software, I knew that Pluto would be re-entering the sign of Aquarius. So we will be seeing that on January the 20th, 2024. We have already briefly seen Pluto enter into Aquarius earlier in 2023, spent about 2-3 months there before it retrograded back into Capricorn. Now, as you guys are watching this, it's there right now, but it is direct, so it is just like a train full steam ahead, heading back into the fixed air sign of Aquarius. Now, that reemergence into the sign is going to happen with the sun. So we're going to see Pluto and the sun moving together the 20th, 21st of 2024. So that's going to be a time to watch, especially if you have any planets around 0 to 3 degrees of Aquarius or the fixed signs. You will be really feeling this transit. Something that's been coming up for me a lot is just in meditation and kind of thinking about this transit is the power to the people. That eventually, as we finally see Pluto make its way back into Capricorn and then, it'll go back into Aquarius again, we're going to see opportunities for people, groups, collective to take the power back. That's ultimately what's going to be happening here. Now, with Pluto in Aquarius at 0 degrees, it is the purest form of Aquarius. We saw earlier this year it got a little hectic. Obviously some places in the world you're not seeing the news, but just generally overall, we have seen major movements, protests, and masses that are gathering together, challenging some of the crime, corruption, and I think overreach that's been going on with the internet, with political figures, all those fun Aquarian kind of characters. We will see Pluto stay in this sign really all the way up until September. So it won't be until September 1st through the 19th that Pluto will return back to Capricorn. So it'll spend just briefly about a month and a half-ish in this 29 degrees of Capricorn. So that's going to be interesting to see Pluto sitting at 29. Obviously, we know that that's like a really critical point, an anaretic degree. And then finally on November 19th, 2024, we will see Pluto re-enter to Aquarius. It is there to stay. It is not going to be going back and forth anymore. And it will stay in Aquarius until roughly 2043. So even when we get to that point, we're going to see Pluto go in and out of Pisces. But All you guys need to know is that in 2024, pretty much 9 months out of the year, we're going to see Pluto in this sign. So we're going to have a much stronger experience with Pluto in Aquarius. And I think it's going to radically change things. It's going to change wealth, technology. It's going to have major shifts also revolving around cybersecurity, cybercrime. And I do think that we could see the death, perhaps, of the way that we are voting and handling kind of elections. Some have speculated in some, political forums that there is concerns as to whether or not we will continue to keep having elections, at least here in the United States. You may say that's crazy, but I do think that that is going to be something that may actually ultimately come up for debate. So yeah, as of the 19th of 2024, Pluto will be back in Aquarius and it will be staying there. So that's my first one. Now the second transit that caught my eye, and it's not any one particular conjunction, really, it's just the whole wave of this. But mid-February of 2024 is going to boast a pretty hefty stellium in Aquarius. So it's going to start up right around Valentine's Day, but it will really kind of stretch into early March of 2024. Now, a stellium is when you have 3 or more planets in any one house or sign. So when this happens, we're going to see mid-month the Sun, Mercury, Mars, Pluto, and then Venus will be joining. We'll all be in the sign of Aquarius. And so this is going to be a time to watch. Reminds me a lot of the spring of 2021. I remember some similar transits that were taking place, although Pluto was not there. But this configuration of all of these planets in conjunction indicates a huge shift that's going on for the masses. It can be big political changes, big government changes, changes also to technology. Aquarius is a sign that rules the future, and it also deals with our collective goals, and also humanitarian efforts. So to see both the South Node ruler, Venus, and the North Node ruler, Mars, in conjunction to Pluto, so it represents some huge change, transformation, and fusion, death and rebirth themes for all of us collectively will be taking place at this time. It'll be interesting to see it sextile the North Node, so it indicates that a lot of this rebelliousness and this wave of awakening is really helping all of us take steps forward to being able to heal, right? You're going to see a lot of aspects with Chiron, but also to step into our future destiny. So it's going to take groups and communities and unification to be able to better kind of support that North Node, and that's about our future direction. So I love the North and the South Node rulers working together, and I'm loving the trines that we're seeing to the South Node. Certainly February of 2024 is going to be a time where really what's going to be the most valuable is going to be friendships, people we can rely on, and I think alliances in general. And it doesn't matter if this is joining a network or focusing on having a really strong core friend group, joining a cause, or starting a group. This is definitely going to be, I think, historical things are going to happen. And in particular, I think it's going to be some movements that will be taking place revolving around freedom. Now, we're also going to see around Valentine's Day, right when this is starting up, a Venus-Pluto conjunction. So first, Mars and Pluto will align, which is a pretty intense energy, to be honest with you, especially as these two planets are receiving squares from Jupiter. But Venus coming into conjunction with Pluto as well does make me feel like this can be about a renewal when it comes to resources, financial systems. Obviously, Venus is the ruler of, or the dispositor of, both Jupiter and Uranus. So all of these planets in Aquarius are in superior position. They're almost like bringing down the hammer on Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, which are both direct. So it may indicate that movements, group collectives, group investments is really putting pressure on the banks, right? Taurus is the bank, the banking system, resources, physical land. Reminds me a lot of when we saw, we saw the AMC stuff that was going on in 2021, where there was like this huge shift revolving around freedom in the markets and being able to monopolize and take advantage of, an opportunity to kind of crowd invest something and kind of like pump up a stock. And so there was a lot of people coming together talking about that on the internet. And it was like this really interesting thing to watch because it was kind of like this underdog move where people who had never really had experience in the stock market or never really had much to begin with financially suddenly had the opportunity to be a part of groups and also learn about financial investments. And so that wealth, right? Pluto Venus is really what I'm watching here. All right, so that will kind of extend out till early March. So we will see all of those planets in close proximity until then. And when Mars and Venus at the beginning of March start separating from Pluto, that's when that energy is going to start to shift. Now, what's interesting is then we are going to also see a pretty significant stellium in Pisces. Now, I didn't make that one of my notes, but to move from Aquarius, where we have this like rebellion or this revolution, to Pisces, where suddenly things then dissolve. I'm curious to see what this dissolving type energy is that comes from this stellium between Saturn, the Sun, and Mercury and Neptune. Now, Venus and Mars will move through there. I definitely feel like having Mars coming into this particular conjunction with both Saturn and Neptune may also be indications of healing themes connecting to hospitals, mental health, also, moves revolving around immigration and action that's being taken at borders. But there will be definitely a lot of that going on next year. Now, my number 3 is going to be the North Node and Chiron conjunction in the sign of Aries. This is very important in my mind. This is probably one of the bigger energies that I'm looking at for 2024. This will be taking place from February 19th through the 25th of 2024. Now, the exact conjunction will be on the 19th. So if you have any personal planets, 15, 16, 17 degrees of Aries, or if that is an angle or, sun, moon, rising, this is something you really want to pay attention to. Now, this particular conjunction does not happen all that often. I'm going to do a whole video on the conjunction. I'm actually planning on doing a webinar on this because I think it's really, really important collectively, but also for ourselves individually to be really focusing on taking some kind of action and healing something. Now, when this conjunction happens, you're fusing together the energy of Chiron, which is about healing, being wounded. It's about isolation, separation, going your own way. If we know the story of Chiron, we know that he's the centaur that kind of gets split off from society and feels rejected. But he also ends up having like psychic healing abilities, and it's connected to being able to heal also with like medicine and the awareness of being able to almost turn your wounds into an opportunity to learn how to take back your power and no longer identify as a victim. Anyway, so this conjunction is going to happen at 16 degrees of Aries. So we can assume that there is going to be some kind of collective North Node need to heal something, right? Chiron. And this is at 16 degrees. So it's about healing the past. It's about doing ancestral work, digging deep, getting to the roots of some of our traumas, some of our fears, our anger, our frustration. And Aries Chiron aspects do deal with head wounds, trauma, psychological issues, but it can also be dealing with cuts, burns, scrapes, and abrasions. Now, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so it does deal with younger people. So I do feel like we may be reflecting on where perhaps some of these emotional wounds, 16, it's a Cancer degree, is coming from our childhood or our families, or maybe we're learning more about ancestral trauma. Maybe we're finally addressing wounding issues revolving around lack of security and home and housing issues. At the time of this conjunction, Mars is going to be in Aquarius, finally separating from Venus and Pluto. And eventually we will also see Mars come into conjunction with Saturn. So I do think that there is going to be a need to start discussing, why, homelessness is, increasing, why individuals, Aries, are having issues mentally, but also I think we're going to see themes revolving around addiction, isolation, separation, and how that can actually, kind of put us in a position of like not being able to get out of this hole. even in 2023, you know, the eclipses in Aries and Libra are teaching us that, you know, through anger and frustration, we're having division in relationships and we're alienating ourselves one way or another. So the key here is to be aware of that going into 2024 so we can actually do something about this alienation. And I do believe it's about physically coming together. So whether that's meeting with people, joining local groups, you know, finding ways to be able to kind of connect and not feeling like we're kind of lost out to sea on our own. Now, there's been many people over the last 2 or 3 years who have been facing alienation primarily because of their own beliefs or concerns revolving around their health. So whether you want to talk about, you know, divisions in relationships, family members, issues at work with employment, because, you know, especially Aries connects to the military, people who can wear uniforms, people who protect, who serve. So I'm looking at like firemen, police officers, first responders, maybe even like, you know, ER nurses and people who have stood up and were willing to be separate from society because of their beliefs when it comes to their medical, you know, decisions and their health. So I think this is going to come up a lot. You know, I think the North Node Chiron is going to encourage everybody to embrace being different and being willing to go their own way. And it's going to be instilling the need for us to be courageous in order to overcome some of the challenges of this conjunction. But that moment is just a moment where it's being seeded. So we will see more of this that's going to get activated when planets go into Aries in the spring, in particular when Mars hits these degrees as well. Now, you'll see this conjunction between the North Node and Aries the 19th through the 25th of February. And like I said, it's about giving us the opportunity to heal collectively through crisis. Now, this will be followed by a eclipse that we're going to have in Aries, which is doubling down. A little bit later, this is going to be taking place in April, but we will see a solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. So this will be the second solar eclipse that we have seen in the cycle of Aries and Libra eclipses. And this features an exact per the minute conjunction to Chiron. So we have the sun and the moon coming together at 19 degrees, and we have Chiron here as well. This is definitely an eclipse that you guys want to make note of because it's going to get activated several times. Solar eclipses bring physical changes, activity, action, and something brand new. And so what's interesting about this is that it is really implementing the need to take action, Aries, to heal the relationships that we have with ourselves. So it's interesting to see this at 19 degrees. It might mean that we're having to work harder to get into better union with ourselves. It might mean that in order to heal relationship issues, it's got to start with us, and it's got to, you know, require us to do a little bit of like reflecting. Now, we're going to see Mercury that's going to be retrograde at the time of the eclipse, and it will come back into conjunction just days later, reactivating this, and I think bringing a sense of awareness to all of us collectively about what we must do to be able to maintain our freedom and our independence. At the time of the eclipse, we're going to see that close fusion to Chiron where we're all collectively working through something that we need to heal. And the ruler, it's going to be conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So it does kind of feel like we're swimming through like the cosmic muck, that there's something going on collectively where we are all becoming acutely aware, where we're being trapped or limited, Saturn, Mars, when it comes to taking action to protect or defend ourselves. So self-defense, you know, is going to be a huge theme. I've been telling you guys this for the last year. And this could be physical defense, you know, how you can defend yourself if you're, you know, potentially attacked. This is also going to be themes revolving around, I think, laws revolving around self-defense, what you can and cannot do to protect yourself. So I'll get into that in a future video, but I do think that that's going to be a huge theme, especially having Mars and Saturn in conjunction, so it can represent some kind of secret withholding or holding on or not allowing something to move forward. It may be bringing up issues revolving around how immigration is impacting individuals, and also themes regarding issues with healthcare, in particular hospitals, and where hospitals are actually surprisingly not helping individuals, that they're actually hurting or hindering individuals. Now, Jupiter is the ruler of, or the dispositor of Mars and Saturn, and we see Jupiter coming into conjunction with Uranus. So we will see a continuation of like this unfolding of awareness of it, just exactly where the money goes, the financial incentives for hospitals as well as doctors and pharmaceutical companies, to see to it that we are all collectively sick and unwell. But with that being said, awareness comes from this eclipse conjunct Mercury, and I think that we are going to see some really interesting things emerge in the spring of 2024, where a fighting spirit is going to kind of be coming up collectively within us all, where we start taking action. And, you know, this is the true astrological new year. Aries season is when things really ignite. So while it may feel like a bit of like a dark winter in 2023 going into the new year, know that when the spring happens, we're all emerging in a way where we're finally ready to kind of tend to some of these wounds and take action. All right, so I would like to read to you guys the Sabian symbol for this conjunction at 19 degrees because I found it very interesting. And because it's 19 degrees and change, we're going to read 20, okay? And so this is page 51 if you have this book. Aries 20, a young girl feeding birds in winter. The keyword is hospitality. The theme is social conscience. The symbol speaks to generosity and nurturance in the process of maturation and development of a social conscience. The image of a young girl feeding birds in winter illustrates the natural desire of man to help those less fortunate than himself, and it implies certain sympathy and awareness of the needs of others. It also alludes to the self-assurance and satisfaction that an individual gains from helping others grow. The young girl symbolizes youth, innocence, and the birds in winter symbolize hope and aspiration that seek to survive the harsh, barren, and seemingly unfruitful periods of life. On a practical level, the symbol suggests charity assistance with no strings attached. At its highest, it represents a unique gift for knowing exactly what others need or want and what is required in any particular case to ensure continued survival and success. Watch for low self-esteem manifested as attempts to buy love and appreciation or be all things to all people. The accent is on assistance. The needs of others take high priority at this time. You may feel unusually concerned and sympathetic or inclined to be especially generous. Your greatest advantage lies in being able to tell the difference between helping and interfering, or between what is asked or what is needed. Guard against being a soft touch or letting yourself get talked into something you may later regret because you hate to say no or you're afraid someone will get angry with you if you refuse. Stepping stones are helpfulness, generosity, giving, kindness, care, concern, social conscience, sympathy, and innocence. So like I said, emerging in the spring after what's probably a cold, harsh winter. And so I could see this as, you know, giving an opportunity to heal our relationships with others. I mean, I don't like saying this, but I've said for some time that, you know, when the North Node and Chiron come into conjunction, you guys can go back and watch some of the videos I put out this last year. The world is going to be aware of the fact that we have a major, major healing crisis on our hands. And I don't know if it's from war. I don't know if it's from pharmaceutical medications. I don't know if it's mental health issues. I think it's going to be a combination of everything. And I think of what's happened in the last few years and how we've become really divided and how there's been a lot of broken relationships, a lot of broken friendships, families that were separated and divided over political beliefs or beliefs revolving around what is and is not correct with mandates. People who couldn't see their family members. And it's just, there's been a lot of broken relationships. And I think that we have an opportunity collectively, instead of saying, I told you so, to take a moment, take a step back, and really look at the bigger picture and realize that we're in a world of shit. And the only way we're going to be able to fix this is by helping other people and giving other people what they need to be able to heal. Not pointing fingers, not saying I told you so, or you should have listened to me, or this is what you deserve, because it's going to be very easy for people to say that. It's going to be important for all of us to be really focusing on being the best versions of ourselves so we can help other people get well. And I think that this is such an amazing degree because it's essentially saying that we have the opportunity to provide assistance and charity with no strings attached. especially in an environment these days where it's like there's strings attached with everything. If you do this, I'll do that, or I'll give you this, but I'm going to ask for a favor down the road. No, no. I think the other side of this is also that there may be things that are being offered with no strings attached. I think of, the potential adoption of universal basic income. I'm looking at Saturn and Mars in conjunction, where it's saying, okay, you're homeless, or, you're having addictions, or you're hungry, or, you need care. We'll give this to you. There's no strings attached. But is there some kind of limitation, Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I have concerns for camps while Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces. I have concerns for FEMA taking advantage of people. I have concerns for, these large masses of people that are suddenly misplaced, or they have, migrated to places that, are immigrated to places that are foreign to them, and suddenly they need aid. And the question is that Mars-Saturn going to be as gnarly as it looks? Is it going to be that we are starting to see that some of these immigrants are starting now to make up our military? Are they going to start wearing uniforms and becoming, police officers? Are we going to start seeing them moving into hospitals, private sectors, jails? So I'm curious to see what happens. I'm curious to see which way it falls, but that, for me, I think the North Node Chiron conjunction and the solar eclipse in Aries are going to be one of the bigger energies of the year. Next to the next one, so this is my number, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my number 4. This is going to be the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus, and that will be at 21 degrees on April 20th, on 420. Okay, so for me, I've been watching this, and I'm going to talk to you guys more about this actually in my new moon in Scorpio video that's coming up pretty soon. We're going to have a new moon in Scorpio conjunct Mars at 21 degrees, and it's planting a seed that will bring us to this moment in the spring of 2024. Majorly anticipated, at least as far as I'm concerned, watching this conjunction get ready to come together. Jupiter in Taurus, which is about wealth, it's about resources, it's about life, it's about abundance. It can also be about physical bodies and laws and regulations revolving around bodies, food and land. Uranus, shocks and surprises, what's unconventional, futuristic, and different. This conjunction, especially if you have any planets around, 19 to 23 degrees of Taurus, sun, moon, or rising, or an angle, you're really going to want to pay attention. Collectively, we're going to feel this one, guys. This is not going to be something that's only going to affect some people. Jupiter's been in Taurus really since this last year, and it's been inching its way closer and closer to Uranus, but it's not going to meet anytime soon. Currently, as you guys are watching this, Jupiter is still retrograde, so it's getting further away from Uranus. But as we get into, March, April, May, you're going to really feel this conjunction pretty strong. Now, Jupiter and Uranus, when they meet, it's about a sudden fast forwarding into the future. It's like hitting warp speed and, just like flying through something. Uranus can be electricity. Uranus can also be about major fluctuations when it comes to the earth or when it comes to the financial systems. Now, when we break this down a little bit further and we look at this conjunction, Jupiter is the dispositor of all these planets that are in Pisces. So we're looking at the Saturn, Mars, Neptune conjunction, which I do believe is going to be a wave of, like I said earlier, issues with homelessness, sickness, people who are needing assistance or feeling lost. These are themes revolving around Pisces. But it can also be about like mental health things. So for me, I think of like Uranus being something that's synthetic. So I'm wondering, is synthetic food or, CBDCs that are, paying out some kind of universal basic income, is that going to be the solution for people? Is that something that's going to be offered? I also think about, the typical Jupiter-Uranus things, earthquakes and sudden, changes revolving around our weather or our planet. And all the while, Venus is also reactivating that eclipse. So we've got Venus at 19 of Aries, conjunct Chiron at 20 of Aries. So even that ties into the eclipse, something that's taking place on the eclipse that's re-triggering the fact that in the spring suddenly, there's going to be this need to pivot very quickly and provide food and resources and services to other people. Mars is a planet also that deals with war, and so we're going to have Mars that's going to be smack dab in between Neptune and Saturn, and it'll be forming a sextile to Jupiter and Uranus. So a lot of this sudden escalation of some need to step further into the future with finances and changes also with those systems is directly stemming from, I believe, issues revolving around war. But there's something weird about Mars and Neptune in conjunction to Saturn. Likely it's something that's happening in another place or something that is hidden. Perhaps maybe it's something that's also taking place on water. So we might see more themes revolving around fleets of Navy ships. Yeah, I mean, natural resources come up for me as well. I think of like Jupiter, Uranus, and the price of natural gases. Something being found that could potentially dramatically affect the price of resources, or getting wind that we don't have as much as we thought and something is like being depleted. So that's definitely going to come up. I have thought for some time, looking at this conjunction, that this is going to be the beginning of like real adoption of cryptocurrency. I'm not a financial advisor. I just look at the stars, but because 21 deals with growth and something that becomes global, and it's also going to be about laws, it would not surprise me if there is, because of such volatility in the markets and economically in the beginning of 2024, that a lot of people are trying to adopt to certain cryptos. And I do feel like there is going to definitely be some incentive, because Saturn is the taskmaster. Saturn is the teacher. He is the regulator who wants to hold on to something. Saturn is holding on to, Mars and Neptune. So you're going to have some people that are going to split off, that are going to be willing to accept support because they think that they're going to feel like they need it. And then you're going to have some people that are going to go to alternate societies and find new ways to trade and get involved in other resources. And they're going to try to kind of go in a different direction. And they'll be sextiling each other, so we'll have to see what kind of happens at that time, but they are influencing one another. So what's the Sabian symbol for that? That'll be 22 of Taurus. Let's see. I know I've read that one to you guys before, because I think Uranus got up to what, 22, 23 here recently. So I know we've read it. Okay, so that'll be 22. Oh, okay, so yeah, 22, white dove over troubled waters, a higher call, a fact that every individual comes into this world with spiritual mission and purpose to guide him, whether or not it's recognized. A white dove over troubled water symbolizes divine protection and triumph of spirit. Over matter, peace of mind, the ability to transcend emotional turmoil and psychological stress. Implicit in this symbol is the freedom and strength that can be gained by listening to the inner voice for guidance and direction. The suggestion here is that the individual who knows the purpose is set out to fulfill will succeed. I've read this to you guys a bunch. I think I remember telling you guys that the song that kept coming up for me was Bridge Over Troubled Water. And I was like, why do I keep hearing that song? And then I did the video and I read the Sabian symbol. So it's interesting that I think so much of some of the turbulence that's coming is about to be seeded when we see that Mars conjunct the new moon in Scorpio, when we see the Sun-Mars conjunction coming, and it's going to be about overcoming some of that, right? And with Saturn in Pisces, Mars in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, I feel like it's a time where we need peace. We need de-escalation of conflict. We need to mediate. We need to learn, to find peaceful resolution. Strong but silent power, I think, is a huge theme with this combination of so many planets in Aries and also in Pisces, that, this awareness that's going to be coming up. If you guys don't think we're in war, we're in a spiritual warfare right now. That's what we're going through. And a lot of the stuff that's being fought is being fought on the ethers. So a lot of the ways to be able to transmute this is going to be about meditation, envisioning the life that we are creating, the future that we are creating, and being able to kind of work away from this constant stress and like worry and getting outside of our bodies. So if you don't have a regular meditation process, it's a really good time to kind of start doing that, because we're going to need that between now and the spring of next year. All right, here's my number 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my number 5. Number 5 for me is going to be the Neptune hitting 29 degrees. And so this is going to happen right around the time that Mars is there. So around the end of April, we're going to see a Mars-Neptune conjunction, which is important because of the North Node. So as we see planets coming into the late degrees of a sign, it represents like a critical turning point. Once again, we're going to see this with Pluto off and on between now and next year. But then here comes Neptune that's going to do it. So Mars will cross Neptune at 28 degrees at the end of April on the 28th. And then the very week we see Neptune hit 29 degrees. So that'll be on May the 3rd. And it looks like the 3rd through the 5th, the moon will be in Pisces. It'll hit Saturn and it'll also hit Neptune. So the very beginning of May is also a time to watch, because that's going to be definitely for all of us collectively bringing up this theme of some turning point or finalizing something in the Pisces area of our life, or something that is beginning to kind of dissolve. Remember, Saturn in Pisces is about dissolving structures that are not solid to begin with. For a lot of us, it's an emperor has no clothes moment, or it's realizing that what we thought was stable or solid or secure may not necessarily be so. Now, 29 degrees of Pisces is a very critical degree. It's the very last degree of the zodiac. And I go both ways on this. Like, we know that 29 degrees can be very psychic, very intuitive, and I do believe that there is this huge shift in consciousness and awareness that's coming, and perhaps maybe this will be part of that's happening in the spring of next year. But it's also going to be, conjunct a very significant star that does have some challenges. So the star that it's going to be conjunct is Scheat, and it's in a constellation that is within Pegasus. So in mundane astrology, this particular area of the stars is associated with drowning, accidents, catastrophes, earthquakes, tsunamis, storms, floods, shipwrecks, mining accidents, airplane accidents, falling accidents, shooting down from high in the air, horses, jockeys, transportation, communication, space travel, exploration, pioneering, science, invention, and heroicism. Here's my hot take. And I've thought this for some time, but, we saw like the Saturn squares, and we saw the issue with the Titanic submarine, right, that imploded. We have recently seen apparently a bunch of recalls and a bunch of parts for airplanes. Jupiter has its exaltation in Cancer, but it also has a connection to Pisces. So I think about like Saturn being in the sign that can be about, expanding in water or expanding in the air and traveling or exploring, and like Saturn is limiting that. So we may see a series of things at 29 degrees of Neptune, that things go missing, people go missing on ships, there's shipwrecks, we see all kinds of issues, definitely with floods and tsunamis. We're going to see more of those, especially because these two are going to be moving into sextiles with Jupiter and Uranus, and so it can literally flood or wash things away. But I keep thinking about how Mars is going to activate that before Neptune hits 29. So, you can be within about a 2-degree orb for it to still be active. So according to my notes, when Mars is conjunct Scheat, we see accidents, and let's see, a lot of ambition, but also combativeness, Mars, Neptune, questioning what direction we're going in. We can see misfortune, family upsets, and danger of death and catastrophe, such as floods, shipwrecks, mining accidents, airplane accidents, and also we will unfortunately see an uptick in suicide. which is not unusual when I see planets in the late degrees of of Pisces. So the question is why, right? Why is this happening? Why are we going to see all of these conjunctions? We'll look at the dispositor, Jupiter and Uranus. You guys have, if you're a bit of a history buff like me, you know that when we had the Great Depression, you know, when everything crashed, there were some people who lost everything, like literally everything. I spent about 15, 16 years living in LA, always got spooked out driving past the, what they call the suicide bridge, but it's the bridge that's over by Pasadena. You know, tens of dozens of people, I mean, just jumping off of that bridge. Apparently during the Depression, everybody claims it's really haunted. There's something that's below that. I don't know if it's like a hotel or what now, but anytime you go past that bridge at night, I just get the creeps. But reminds me of that, unfortunately. It reminds me of how people are going to become aware of just how significant this financial shift is going to be that's coming in the spring of 2024. And a lot of people aren't really going to know what to do. Now, the other side of me says that this is the opportunity to kind of like release and let everything go. It's only when you've lost everything that you're free to kind of start over. So it may also incentivize some people to go, screw it, I don't need all of the things. I don't need the physical stuff. You know, what I need is to be able to have security. I need all of the Taurus things, a roof over my head, some food, the basic resources, and just what I need to be able to kind of rebuild. So on the heels of this conjunction, we are also going to see quite a hefty stellium in Taurus. And it makes me feel like some people may be getting back down to basics. Some people may be shifting the way that they look at wealth and resources. Some people who have positioned themselves accordingly may be experiencing, you know, unbelievable levels of wealth as a result of knowing that certain systems are breaking down. Now pay attention to this Neptune at 29 degrees, because even when it retrogrades, it's going to come back and we're going to see Saturn and Neptune dancing with these degrees clear into 2025. So this isn't going to be anything that's going to go away. But I do think that some people are going to have the opportunity to really clean up. So it's going to be about whether or not you're really on the up and up with what's going on globally in terms of the financial patterns and what's going to be valuable. Well, land. You know, Jupiter, Uranus in Taurus can be talking about group land investments or community gardens, knowledge revolving around resources, but also how to grow food. And farmers are going to prove to be people who are very, very, very valuable to have in society, because they are going to help teach people how to be able to grow their own food, or they may be a resource if we do find that there are certain you know, companies or resources that do kind of fail us in the midst of some of the chaos that's going to be going on next year. All right, so then we have for my, I think this is 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, this is 6. This will be in May, so this will be on May the 19th. We're going to see Mars conjunct the North Node. And this is important because really there's a few decent Mars transits throughout this North Node in Aries. One we're in right now, where Mars is in Scorpio, and even though throughout Scorpio season it's going to feel a little uncomfortable as we're quincunxing Aries, you want to think that Aries is 6 signs away from Scorpio, so where we're afraid or resistant to change, it's putting the pressure on us to really finally come to terms with where we need to, you know, take action or what we need to heal. We'll see another decent move with Mars also through Capricorn that's going to be starting up here later at the end of the year, going into the new year. But I'm really excited to see Mars in the North Node, because I feel like, at least for most of us, it's going to be about being able to start the process of rebuilding or taking action or being able to kind of bring something into fruition. Having, you know, courage, being brave, starting new projects, getting physically active, being more motivated, especially with Mars being at 14 degrees, which is a Taurus degree. So it's going to be about working hard and being able to bring in what it is that we actually, what we value, right? The resources that we need, and making sure that we're taking action revolving around that. Anyway, can the Mars North Node conjunction be conflict, hostility, and other issues? Sure. I do feel like this is going to be some people that are fighting for food, money, and resources, because it's at a Taurus degree and we have a stellium of planets that are in Taurus. So we're going to see like the Sun and Jupiter come into conjunction with the late degrees of Taurus, and it's going to conjunct Algol. So you could see some people that are getting particularly crazy over, you know, what they want to hold on to, what they want to possess, what they want to collect. And some things, you know, are going to be worth fighting for, right? Especially if it's going to be having possession of your resources and being able to make sure that you can get the food and the money and the things that you potentially need. So I don't think that this Sun, Jupiter, Venus conjunction is as sweet as other astrologers will make it out to be. Although I love to see the Sun, Jupiter, I think with Venus being close by with Uranus, I think this is going to be where greed and hoarding and people who have an excess of things, or perhaps a bunch of, you know, like millionaires and billionaires who are running around with all of their excess. You're going to see like the little people running around with their pitchforks and their torches, going after those who are not necessarily sharing the resources with those who are in need. So it's going to be a very, very different energy with that conjunction. But in my mind, you know, I then think about the eclipses and how shortly after that conjunction, then Mars is going to be activating the eclipse, and that'll be around the end of May. So bringing up themes revolving around, okay, we set these intentions in April. Now we're initiating. So the spring is going to be such a great energy once we get all these planets out of, you know, Capricorn and out of Pisces. It's going to be a very different vibe. It's going to be like get up and go. Days later, you'll see Jupiter go into Gemini. All right, so then in mid-August, this is my number 6, 7, 8. So this is my number 7. In mid-August, we're going to see Jupiter in Gemini, so it's going to be in its fall, coming into a square with Saturn. So this is interesting. If those of you guys who have already looked at this in your software, your ephemeris, we are going to see roundabout within like a day or so of Jupiter squaring Saturn, Mars is going to be there as well. So interesting stuff. So to break it down for you guys, you know, Jupiter moving into Gemini, it's moving into its opposite sign. So it's moving into its fall. Jupiter is about generosity and travel and belief system, philosophy, education. It can be about law, and it's moving into a sign that is kind of flippant. Unlike Jupiter in Sag, which wants to get out and boast and teach and travel and share with people and kind of be sagely, Jupiter in Gemini can be very quick moving. It could quickly, especially with Mars being there, could change direction a lot in terms of, you know, Gemini things, media. I think we're going to see new rules revolving around media, in particular the internet or access or through media accounts. I do feel like with Jupiter coming into a square with Saturn, this is an opening square. This is where the media is going to perhaps be, you know, having some effects or some dimming from Saturn, where we're going to see a lot more focus and emphasis on controlling narratives, a lot more clamping down, and there being a lot of oversight. And yeah, just not necessarily allowing that freedom. Now, especially Jupiter being in its fall, I could see where there is a sense of feeling like, well, there's too much stuff that's out there on certain social media platforms. We don't know if it's true or false. You know, there's too much false information that's being put out there that's conflicting with the general overall narrative of, you know, said leaders, Saturn in Pisces. And I think this is also where there's like secrecy, you know. I think it's kind of bizarre that we do see a lot of, at least in Ukraine, money being sent to a country that we're not really seeing what's going on with the war there. We haven't really seen anything for the last year. I'm not saying it's not happening, but we're not seeing it. And Pisces deals with what's secretive. It also deals with screens. So a lot of what is happening is not being seen. Now, on the flip side, like this Mars-Jupiter conjunction can be an indication that there are people just going out there, they're in the field, they've got their cell phone, they're taking videos. We're going to see a lot more focus on independent journalists. But that's also going to be something that's really going to clamp down because Saturn is going to be in superior position. So where Jupiter wants to expand, it wants to share, and it doesn't always have a filter, and it's not always honest. Saturn is going to say, no, there's too many things that are being spread. There's too many falsehoods that are being put out there, especially pertaining to war, right? Mars and Jupiter. So Mars is limiting Jupiter's ability to have freedom. So I definitely think we're going to see the continuation of fact checking, but also of limitation of freedom when it comes to media, and that's going to continue. So where Jupiter wants to expand, Saturn wants contraction, and I'm especially watching around the events in mid-August because I think that there can be certain things that are going on where with this activation with the moon squaring at the time that it conjuncts, remember the North Node is ruled by Mars, there is going to be some conflicting accounts of stuff that's going on either with weather, war, or transportation. In particular, Gemini does deal with vehicles. It deals also with themes with documents, so like IDs and driver's licenses and passports, particularly foreign travel. And I do feel like we're going to start to kind of see where our traveling is being limited because of that square to Saturn. And we'll be in the midst of a Mercury retrograde. So we're going to be finding out that there's probably going to be more hoops that we're going to have to go through revolving around, getting passports, getting IDs. We're going to hear more about, traveling to certain places. There might be delays or like limitations specifically because of what's going on in the world. So, I'm not really feeling so thrilled about the square, especially because, I like to see Mars and Jupiter in conjunction. If it's well aspected, it can be, okay, I know this is the right fight to fight or like the right thing to do, or like I'm feeling really good about it, I'm going to take a chance. And with the Mars, connection to the North Node, I feel like a lot of people are going to feel like now's the time to make that video, to speak out. And then they're going to realize like it got them shut out, got them shadow banned. Could this be a fight potentially, especially for, local networks, TV stations, radio stations, content creators, maybe you're going to see a significant pushback against censorship, but I'm not as optimistic about it. But I think the fact that things are being censored in itself is enough to kind of show you that they're losing sight of the narrative, like they're losing control. And where the COVID stuff wasn't necessarily working, so now there's going to be a push with, now there's another war. It's going to be something else that's going to come. And if you're going against the narrative and talking about it, Gemini, or trying to create media or content around it, or you're putting yourself out there, you're going to see some Saturn smackdowns with people being limited. So I'll leave it at that. All right, so then my number, what else do I have? My number 8. Yeah, my number 8 is going to be in September. And this will be the very first eclipse that we're going to see in Pisces. This will be September 17th, 2024. The very first eclipse that is a part of the series of eclipses that we're going to see in Pisces and Virgo. So this is the very first one. A lunar eclipse, so big emotional shifts happening in regards to all of us collectively. The North Node is still in Aries, but it's close enough to be picking up that eclipse. So it's a full moon on steroids. And if you notice, the moon is smack dab between Neptune and also Saturn, which are both retrograde. Now, at the time of the eclipse, the dispositor, the traditional ruler, Jupiter, is in a square. So it's making everything feel bigger, revolving around limitations of travel or, collective undoing, worry, concern, all of that Pisces stuff in the late degrees. And Jupiter will be the focal point of the square between this eclipse. And then the co-ruler obviously is going to be also in the same sign. So to see the moon smack dab between Saturn, which is a limitation energy, and Neptune, which is a dissolving energy, I think a lot of people are going to be looking around being like, oh my God, is the world melting? Like, what's happening? Although it sounds scary, I have thought for some time that the times that we're in right now, some might say biblical, right? Quite literally with planets in Pisces. that everything is coming to the last moments, right? Look at Neptune at 28. Look at this eclipse at 25. Look at Pluto at 29. We've even got Jupiter and Uranus coming up to the late degrees, the sun. Everything is changing. It's coming to the end of one cycle. So we're seeing everything break down because everything is going to have to be renewed when Saturn and Neptune get into Aries. So what you're going to be feeling most likely is that there's big themes revolving around Pisces, hospitals, prisons, immigration issues, themes revolving around, religion. Once again, call me crazy, but this is just quite literally word for word the astrology. Saturn represents basically government figures. It represents leaders and those who are, overseeing everything. Capricorn, Saturn energy is looking over everything, controlling things. Saturn is in a sign where it's in secret. So Pisces is behind the scenes. So dare I say shadow government much? But we're also going to be seeing that this particular eclipse is really highlighting what's going on behind the scenes, what's falling apart, what's not working, what's being hidden is about to be unveiled. Remember, when we have full moons, there is some big reveal. So I think we're going to be finding that there is lots of secrets and things that have been hidden that are starting to emerge for all of us collectively, that is now falling apart. Also, I do believe that this can be a time where we are hearing more about the infiltration into spiritual or religious groups. I do think that we're definitely going to see some government moves, some secret operations, or you're going to see some three-letter agencies that are going to be infiltrating religious and spiritual groups. So we're going to see a lot of, I think, religious extremism that's going to be incited basically by some of these groups. I think we're also going to be seeing that there's going to be this huge shift revolving around a lot of people who are wanting to get saved and going back into Christianity or Catholicism. I think we're going to see lots of people being baptized and lots of people thinking that this is end times because we're going to have so many planets and an eclipse in the late degrees of Pisces. But also, I wonder, what's going to be happening? Are we going to be hearing from certain leaders? I think of the late degrees of Pisces as, church leaders or popes or, major religious figures coming out and saying, this is not working collectively. We all have to come together. We're going to have this new religion. We're going to merge everything together. And I'm not really a major religious person. I'm not really a faith person. I'm more of a spiritual person. My background is also in theology, so I happen to know a thing or two about this stuff, but I have the same philosophy that I have about borders. International unity is amazing. We want to have peace. We want to have good relations with each other. But there is a need to maintain some of our culture. There is a need to protect our borders. There is a need to really look out for ourselves first and then focus on the world at large. Same thing with religion. I personally think that there is going to be some incentive or some orchestrated moves to start infiltrating religious groups and convincing people that we all have to come together and be merging religions or practicing the same thing with this particular transit, especially because Jupiter is going to be a square. And I think you might start seeing some fusion of some religious or sacred texts that are being brought together and being sold as this is what we are all going to be practicing. Don't believe me? Watch for it next year when you start seeing major religious leaders coming together and leading prayers in multiple languages and trying to convince people that we are all practicing the same religion. All right, so then we've got number 8. And this is going to be, oh no, this is number 9. I take that back. This is number 9. So this is going to be November when Mars hits 29 degrees or Pluto hits 29 degrees of Capricorn. No, sorry, Mars hits 29 degrees of Cancer. So something you guys are going to see in the end of the year is there's going to be a Mars retrograde. And this is the time that you guys want to watch because Mars is the ruler of the North Node. So Mars is going to oppose Pluto, and it looks like this is going to be happening around the 2nd or the 3rd of November. Now, I'm sure many of you guys know, Mars in opposition to Pluto, we see some really extreme things. We see violence, we see sometimes death, we see brutality, sometimes we see war breakout. Mars represents that push, right, to kind of like strike a nerve, and Pluto represents power. So when you see these two badasses of astrology duke it out, generally Mars is going to get a word in, but Pluto's going to have the final say. And oppositions are relational, so there's going to be some strife, right? Mars opposed Pluto, revolving around home, family, emotions versus, Pluto and Capricorn, themes revolving around business, control, oversight over things. A Mars-Pluto opposition is important because, Mars rules the North Node, and we've got Mars that's going to be debilitated in the sign of Cancer. So this is a tipping point. It will also be squaring the eclipse that we had, in spring of this year. That was at 29 degrees. So when planets hit that 29 degrees, we do see stuff hits a critical point. You'll probably start to see from the time that the sun is squaring Pluto, some of this stuff coming up as well. But this represents wrapping something up, and you're going to have to look at where action is being taken place in the Cancer area of your life, and it's bringing about some necessary action to create change in the Pluto area. All right, so then what we're going to see after that happens is Mars will actually retrograde back, and it's going to be interesting because you're going to see Pluto go back into Aquarius, and we're going to see Mars go into Leo. So my number 10 will be not just the Mars retrograde that'll be taking place in Leo. So it's going to start in Leo. It's going to retrograde back to Cancer. But the fact that we're going to then see another Mars oppose Pluto. So watch this. So Mars enters into Leo, comes out of the opposition around the 4th. It's then trining the North Node, so it's got some strength. And then we're going to see Mars hit about 6 degrees, and that looks like that's going to be happening on December 6th. Mars will then retrograde. So if you have any planets around the early degrees of Leo or the late degrees of Cancer, Mars will be retrograding through these degrees. Being that Mars is the ruler of the North Node, even though the retrograde is challenging, it will be trining the North Node. And Mars is going to be moving through Leo, a sign that deals with the heart space, creativity, self-expression, children, younger people, creatives, performers. So it may mean that there is some necessary changing in direction with leadership. Interesting that this is also going to be coming after the 2024 election here in the United States. We're going to be having that in November. So I'm very curious to see what's happening here. I'm also very curious to see the Mars retrograde in aspect to Trump's ascendant and what that potentially means for him if that is a return. As many of you guys may or may not know, the future for Biden's astrology, and I will do this as we get closer, this is not me politicking, but the future of Biden's chart when it comes to another presidency is not looking so hot. Pluto squares Moon, eclipses in his 12th house, Jupiter, Uranus in his 6th. I feel like he's not going to be able to keep up with the schedule, and I'll compare all of the charts. But I'm curious to see the Jupiter, return in the Jupiter transit in Trump's 10th, and then a Mars retrograde on the ascendant, and what that means if there is some changing or reevaluating his status in some way. And we're also probably going to have another Democratic candidate, I think, that may potentially run between now and the spring. So I do assume that there might be other people who are going to kind of throw their hat into the ring. So stay tuned. I'll do my political astrology as we get closer to next year. Because quite honestly, I for one am not totally sold that there will be a 2024 election. Having looked at the astrology, I wonder if there is going to be this build up to things that are going to happen that may potentially elect a wartime president, and Biden may continue to stay in office. So we'll see. So that opposition obviously is going to come back again. We're going to see that, and it's in a different sign. So where Mars at 29 degrees in Cancer in opposition to 29 degrees of Capricorn does seem to represent some crisis revolving around homes and families, or providing for home and family versus the business aspect or the side of Capricorn. When this opposition hits, it's going to be at 0 degrees right here. Oh no, 1 degrees, excuse me. And that will happen with the moon. That's taking us into January of 2025, but that's okay. That's one exact year. So it looks like New Year's Day is going to coincide with the Moon-Pluto conjunction and an opposition to Mars, which will be retrograde, trine the North Node. And as we come into 2025, we are then going to be seeing the North Node coming into conjunction with Neptune, some kind of mass collective, releasing and letting go, on kind of unwinding. And then Saturn and Neptune will be moving towards their conjunction in Aries at 0 degrees. Long story short, 2024 is going to be one hell of a year. I do believe, in spite of a lot of this stuff, that the future is bright. I do believe that for many of us, this is going to represent the year where we wake up and we start to realize that a lot of things are an illusion, that what we watch on TV or on the internet is not always real, that there are stages and fabrications and things that are, manipulated, or AI. I think we're also going to become aware of the illusion of choice, the illusion of freedom, and realize that to some extent, a lot of what's been going on is a result of us not being aware of our abilities, our power, the ability to be able to, take charge. I look forward to Pluto and Aquarius sextiling the North Node. I look forward to also being able to see the Saturn-Neptune conjunction happen eventually in 2025, which is going to, I think, really kind of be that Scooby-Doo moment, where we pull the mask off the villains and we're able to just start over, to hit restart. Pluto in the early degrees of Aquarius, Saturn and Neptune in the early degrees of Aries, Jupiter in Gemini. My goodness, this is very, very different energy than what we have been experiencing. So at the very least, it's going to be, I think, quite eventful. Let me know what you guys think, if I missed anything. I mean, yes, there's a lot of transits, but I had to limit it to about 10. In closing, I do want to say that I did, ask the tarot. I was like, this looks like some crazy stuff, dude. Like, what do we need to be aware of? And I pulled 3 cards, and these are the 3 cards that I got in this order. Okay, so I got the Strength card, followed by the Wheel of Fortune, followed by the World card. And it's crazy. I can't remember who I was listening to, but I was listening to a podcast that was talking about how there's going to be a bunch of really significant solar cycles in 2024 that are similar to ones that we have seen over the last 200 years that seem to coincide with major revolutions in all parts of the world. And when I pulled the Strength card, I started laughing because of the connection to Leo, obviously, but also to the connection to the sun, the connection to everything being interconnected. The Strength card obviously, has that infinity sign above the maiden's head, which is talking about everything constantly cycling through, a never-ending kind of connection to all things, being able also to overcome things. The Strength card isn't about physical strength. It's about emotional strength and our ability to, I think, work through issues, especially when it comes to conflict or force, right? She doesn't have a leash or a cage on the lion. She doesn't have him in a headlock. She's embracing him. So she's basically learning that strength doesn't have to be physical strength. It can be compassion. It can be honesty. It can be loyalty. It can be love, unconditional devotion. So I love this card because this is a card that teaches us that we have to be able to flex these abilities in order to overcome things and find our joy, right? The card is bright yellow for a good reason. Second card being the Wheel of Fortune. Okay, so we've got 2 kind of wheels here, which for me symbolize cycles kind of wrapping up, moving through some stuff. Obviously, the Wheel of Fortune also talks about visions. This is connected to Ezekiel's wheel. And being able to kind of peer into the future and see that significant building blocks are kind of coming into place that's going to help kind of set the world up for some major changes. Now, the Wheel of Fortune is about the right time at the right place, right? If you guys think of the show, The Wheel of Fortune, they spin the wheel and they're sitting there hoping that it's going to land on something. And sometimes you get that green $1 and you're set. And then other times you get 5 cents and you know that you're just screwed. So the Wheel of Fortune is not necessarily good nor bad. It's a neutral. It's about fate playing a role in kind of doling out whatever it is that you're supposed to be receiving in that moment. But generally speaking, especially when it's upright, which it was, it does say there's serendipitous things happening. The universe is intervening. Things are getting ready to change, and it's going to be quite eventful and that fortune may be in your favor. This is also about the fixed sign months, which I'm particularly interested in, watching Pluto go into Aquarius, watching Jupiter and Uranus conjunct in Taurus, watching Mars retrograde through Leo, like holy shift Scorpio season, man. Like that's going to be really crazy to kind of see all of that stuff happen. As always, that's when like shit hits the fan. But this is talking about the shifts that are happening with the fixed signs. And we know that the fixed signs carry on the energy of what the cardinal signs have already initiated. So you may want to be paying attention to those months next year. And then finally, the last card that I get is the World card, which is basically talking about cycles completing. Here are those fixed signs once again in all four corners. It represents karma, evolution, soul lessons, cleansing. This is the pass and go, collecting $200 on to the next thing. Some may say that this does indicate that we are all leveling up, especially emotionally and I think karmically, right? The World card comes up when a client's asking me like, is it really done? I'm like, yeah, and you should celebrate because you finally learned this lesson. It's behind you. You're on to the next thing. The next card after this is the Fool, which is about Uranus, and it's about radical new beginnings, right? This is the end. That's the beginning. So something about this makes me feel like all of us are going to see some, big conclusion, some big completion, but rightfully so. Cycles are kind of fleshing themselves out. So as we approach 2025, we can go, okay, what did we learn? How do we take from the past and figure out how we're going to be able to better move into the future? What has happened has happened. We have to move forward. We're not going to get stuck in the past. And we're all kind of learning and growing on a soul level in the process. So with that said, the future is bright. With astrology, there's always something coming, and I feel like in spite of some of this stuff, I'm kind of excited because I feel like I finally gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, we signed up to be here, just grab some popcorn and watch the fireworks, and hopefully continue to be with you guys along for the ride as some of this stuff develops. So we'll talk more about some of this stuff as we get closer to the new year. Just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a snack. So you can tide you over until we get to January. For those of you guys who are already looking at these transits, let me know, how do you feel about this? What are you looking at? What do you have your eye on? Are any of these transits going to be impacting you personally? I'll put this in the description also, because once I start putting up all the text and everything, it kind of gets lost. I would rather you guys look at the screen. So if you're wondering, like, where are the dates for this? Where is it? Click the button below, click the description. You're going to go past all of the links and I will put that in there so that way you guys can save this and put this into your calendar. Also, I sell astrological calendars. We're going to be putting out very soon the 2024 astro calendar. It's done. I'm just getting back the final kind of prints on it, and then we're going to start selling those. We do personal astrology calendars as well, so you can pick that up on my website for $19.99. You get a full 12 months of personal transits that you can import directly into your digital calendar for Google or even on your iPhone. And we have all different kinds of stuff. So if you guys like my insight into the future, you guys can support me as a content creator by booking an appointment with me, or you guys can buy some of my calendars if that's something that interests you. For all of that and much more, check out beyondtheveiltarot.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter so that way I can let you guys know about all the sales and stuff that we're going to be having for the holiday. We're going to put a sale for a lot of the courses and the products, okay? All right, so until next time, guys, enjoy, be optimistic about the future, and I will see you guys back here on Thursday. Take care.